Masechet Baba Kama Daf Sadi Bet Einu Mishnah. Af al pi shehu noten lo en nimcha lo ad shivakesh mimenu shneimar ve'ata hasheb eshet ve'gomer. We talked about if a human damages another human, they have to pay the 5 different means of compensation. This Mishnah adds that even though he's paying for all these 5 things, nevertheless, the assailant will not be forgiven until he asks for, he gives an apology and asks for forgiveness, right? It's not like you can just go punch someone and then, I'll just pay all these 5 things. There's also a sin involved and an affront to one's fellow human being, and therefore he also has to ask an apology. What's the source text from which we know this? It's regarding Abraham and Abimelech. When Abraham goes and Abimelech takes his wife, thinking it's his sister, thinking or not really wanting to know the truth, and then Abimelech gets punished with a plague, and then Hashem tells Abimelech, go and return the wife of this man, because he is a prophet, and so that's number 1. He has to return the wife, and Abimelech does return the wife and gives money. So that's the compensation and the return of what the wrong that was done. But that's not sufficient. You also have to ask him to pray for you, right? You have to, this would be equivalent to apologizing, such that not only will he forgive you, but even Abraham will even pray for your welfare, that you should get better. And there's a responsibility also on the other side, on the side of the victim, that a victim should readily accept the apology. So how do we know that if a victim of an injury that does not forgive the assailant is considered cruel? If the assailant really makes teshuvah and makes a sincere apology, then it's the obligation of the victim to accept it. We learn that from Avraham, because Avraham, sure enough, even though Avimelech did this terrible thing to him, nevertheless, Avraham prays to Hashem, and as a result of that prayer, Hashem heals Avimelech and his family, and they have children. Ha-omer, same'et ayeni keta et yadi shaberet ragli chayab, al menat liftor chayab. If someone says, do me a favor, take out my eye, cut off my hand, break my leg, he's asking you to do this, and then you go ahead and do it, you're nevertheless liable, right? Why is he saying that? Why is he asking to break his leg? I don't know. Maybe he's in a very angry mood and says, I want you to break my leg, but no one really means it in their right mind that they actually want their leg to be broken, and even if they ask you to do it, you can't do it, and if you do it, you have to pay for it. And even if the person says, I want you to break my leg on condition that you won't have to pay, nevertheless, you do have to pay. You can't even self-mutilate. Certainly you can't harm someone else, even if they give you permission to do so. Kirat kesuti shaberet kadi hayav amenat liftor patur. The same is true if someone says, tear my garment, break my jug, and then you go and do it. You still have to pay, because basically he said, you go ahead, I give you permission to break my jug, but then he didn't say you're not going to pay for it, so you still have to pay, right? You just, I don't mind if you want to get your anger out and break this jug, go ahead, but then you're going to pay me back. On the other hand, if the person says, break it on condition that you will be exempt, then that's okay, right? When it comes to bodily harm, you can't harm someone's body, even with permission, even if they say you'll be exempt. But when it comes to damages of property, if they say, go ahead and break it, and I won't hold you liable, you won't have to pay, that's okay. A person can always forgive a monetary payment. If a sender sends a messenger, maybe the mob boss sends a thug and says, listen, go and harm that person, go break his legs, and you won't be liable, right? I'll take care of it, you won't have to pay. Nevertheless, the messenger, the one who actually does the injury, is liable, and here it makes no difference whether it's breaking his legs and causing bodily harm, or property, go and burn his house down, or or break his jug. In any case, the messenger is liable because en shaliach lidbar avera. If I tell you to do a sin and you do it, you're responsible for doing the sin. Now, the sender also is not a great guy. He's also a rasha for doing so. But financially, the one who actually does the act is the one that is liable. And you can't say, oh, he told me to. Okay, Tanora Banan, the Baraita that elaborates on the opening of the Mishnah, Kol elu shamru deme boshto, aval sa'aro afilu hevi kol ele nevayot sheba'olam, en nimcha lo, ad shevakesh mimenu, shene'emar, Hashem eshet ha'ish ki nabihu, V'itpalel ba'adcha. So all these that we said in the previous Mishnah, that you have to pay, and you have to pay for humiliation, depending on if he hit you with a fist, or he slapped you on the cheek, or slapped you backhanded, or took off your person's shirt. So you have to pay boshet. But that's not at the end of the matter. Even though you pay that 400 dinar for the boshet, nevertheless, there's also mental anguish. Sa'aro here is not referring to pain, which is another one of the payments, your physical pain that one has if you punch someone, but rather the mental anguish of the humiliation, which doesn't go away because you get paid. It only goes away if the person apologizes. And therefore, even if the assailant brings all rams of nevayot, that were considered the highest quality rams, and gives it to you as a gift, still, you're not going to feel better because the person hasn't apologized, all right, until he apologizes and requests forgiveness. How do we know that? Again, back to the pasuk regarding Avraham. Hashem tells Avimelech, return the wife of this man, for he is a prophet, and that's just returning the thing that you took and giving compensation, but then also ask him to pray for you. Ask for forgiveness. Okay, that's the source. Now we ask, we don't understand this pasuk. Go and return the wife of this man because he's a navi. Wait, so you only have to return his wife because he's a navi, because he's a prophet? What if he was a regular person? Avimelech stole a regular person's wife. Then you wouldn't have to return it? What's the significance of the fact that Avraham is a navi? Amar Rabbi Shemuel bar Nachmani Amar Rabbi Yonatan, Hashem eshet ha'ish mikol makom. Udka amar tagoy gam sadik taharog, halohu amar li achoti hi, vihi gam hi amira achihu, nabihu uchvad limed, ach sanai shebala'ir al iskei achila ushtiya shoalin oto, o al iskei ishto shoalin oto, ishtecha hi, achotcha hi, mikan lebenoch shenherag, shaya lo lelmod, velo lamad. So Rabbi Shemuel, son of Nachman, said, name of Rabbi Yonatan, and explains as follows. The first part of the phrase, return the wife of this man, that is no matter what. If you steal a married woman, you have to return that woman to her husband. That would apply to any person. Now, the second phrase, the Navi, who is addressing a different thing. Avimelech said, oh, I'm innocent, right? Are you going to destroy even a righteous nation, right? I am righteous. But after all, Abraham told me that this is his sister, and she also told me that he is my brother. So I was doing the right thing, right? They told me it's his sister, so I didn't know she was married. I didn't do anything wrong. You're gonna give a punishment to a righteous person? This was Avimelech's claim. So, what's the counterclaim? Navihu. Avraham is a Navi, and he can see better than you think. He understands what's really going on, and he already figured out. He learned how to conduct himself with a person like you, right? What were the hints that Avimelech gave that he wasn't quite sincere? It's as follows: If a visitor comes comes to your city, achsenai is a Greek word that comes from the root xenos, like xenophobia means fear of strangers. So xeno, stranger, achsenai has the same root. Okay, a stranger comes to your city, right? So what should you discuss with them? You should talk to them about food and drink. You ask them, can we help you? Can we feed you? Can we give you drink? Right? That's how you host a guest, right? That's the proper thing to do. Or do you think it's proper to ask about his wife? Oh, who is this? Is this your wife? Is this your sister? But you see, so Avimelech, he didn't go and ask, can I give you food and drink? Rather, he was asking, who is this? Is this your wife? Is this your sister? From those questions, you could see that Avimelech, his mind was not to actually help these guests who are coming from the way, but rather he already had his eye on her, and he's like, wife, a sister, and if you answered wife, then likely than not, he would have killed Avraham and taken her anyway. And so Avraham saw the situation. This is not Avimelech is not such a tzaddik. He's acting all self-righteous. Meanwhile, you can tell from the way he approaches this guest and the questions that he asked that he had intended to steal the wife all along. And we learn from this story that a ben Noach, like Avimelech, gets the death penalty for transgressing one of the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach, even if he never was told explicitly. Why? Because ignorance is not an excuse. He should have learned what's the right thing to do. What are my proper moral obligations towards my Creator? And he should have done the right thing, right? Like Cain and Hebel. Cain, was he ever told, don't kill? You have to know not to kill. You're not sure? You don't know? Go study from him. Go learn from a master and go figure out what's the right way to learn. And that's true in modern law as well. A person can't say, I didn't know I wasn't allowed to double park. I didn't know the law. I didn't know I had to pay taxes. It's your responsibility as a citizen to know what the laws of the land are. And so too Avimelech should have known. Ki asor asad Hashem amar Rabbi Elazar shete asidot halalu lamma. Now that we brought up the story of Abraham and Abimelech, we're going to explain some of the other pisukim related to that story. It says Hashem healed them because before that, when Avimelech took his Sarai, Hashem had stopped up all of the wombs of the house of Avimelech because he took someone else's wife, his own wives and concubines. None of them could give birth. So Rabbi Elazar says there's a double language here. Asor, asar. Why double language? Just say they couldn't have been given birth. Achat be'ish shichvat zera, shetayim be'isha shichvat zera ve'leda. It's referring to multiple stoppages. One is for the men of the household, that their zera would not flow, so the men became barren, and also the women. They experienced two types of stoppages. One, their own zera, the seed of a woman, maybe referring to their eggs, would not come down, so the women were barren, and also they weren't able to give birth. They couldn't conceive, they couldn't give birth, nothing at all. Now we're going to add more punishments to Avimelech's family and explain even further. Asad, not only were the reproductive tracts all stopped up, but in fact even more. Two regarding the man, one his zera, and also the unable to urinate. So all the men weren't able to urinate. And three, regarding a woman, one is her own zera, reproductive systems, and the woman couldn't urinate and also could not give birth. That's three stoppages for women. Ravina amar shalosh shichvat zera uktanim upi tabaat, arba'a ba'isha shichvat zera ve'leda uktanim upi tabaat. Ravina adds even more punishments to Avimelech's family. And there was three stoppages regarding the men. One is zera, and also number one and number two, they all were constipated for that whole time. And four regarding a woman, one is her own reproductive systems and her ability to give birth, and the number one and number two for the women all were stopped up. בעד כל רחם, אמרי דבר רבי ינאי, אפילו תרנגות של בית אבימלך לא הטילה בסתה. And then the pasuk says, all the wombs of the house of Avimelech. What's it adding all the wombs? Even the chickens in the house of Avimelech didn't lay any eggs during that whole time. They couldn't have any scrambled eggs during that time. You took someone else's wife, you don't respect marriage, so then you don't deserve the product of marriage and having children or reproductivity anywhere in your household. אמר לרבן רבא בר מרי, מנה המילתא דאמור רבנן, כל מבקש רחמים על חברו והוא צריך לאותו דבר, והוא נענה תחילה. Now, since we're going to continue discussing these Pesukim regarding Avraham, And the Rava asks Rabba Bar Mari, how do you know this? What's the source from Pisukim, from the statement that the rabbis say, that anyone who makes a request from Hashem on behalf of his friend, and he needs that very same thing. Let's say your friend has a toothache, and you pray for your friend, right? Please heal his toothache. And you also have a toothache. How do you know that the person who prays gets answered first? Amar le dichtiv Hashem shabet shevut Iyov itpalelo be'ad re'ayehu. Iyov prayed on behalf of his friends, his so-called friends, right, who came to visit him and give him consolation and said, you must have sinned, right, with friends like that. But anyway, Iyov, in the end, Iyov prayed on behalf of his friends that they should not be punished. And as soon as he prayed for his friends, Hashem returned all the fortune of Iyov, his wealth, his children, everything was given back to him in double. Why? First, because he prayed for his friends. If you pray for others, then those very prayers are answered for yourself first. Rava said, that's where you get your proof from Iyov. I have a different proof. I can learn the same thing from here, from our Pisukim regarding Abraham and Avimelech. It says that Abraham prayed to Hashem on behalf of Avimelech, and sure enough, Hashem healed Avimelech and his wives and his maidservants. And it says right after that Hashem remembered Sarah, Kasher Amar. Now the simple reading of the Kasher Amar is as Hashem said. Hashem already promised that he's going to give a child to Sarah, and so now Hashem revisited Sarah and gave her a child as he had promised. But this Midrash says Kasher Amar refers not to Hashem's statement, but rather Avraham's statement. And it means when Avraham prayed for Avimelech, then Hashem remembered Sarah and answered Avraham's prayer for Sarah even first, because he prayed for others, right? When you care for others, then and only, then that care that you need will be answered first. Amar le-Rava bar Mari. Now we're going to see a bunch of statements between the same two sages that we saw before, Rava and Rava bar Mari, regarding other things that they are deriving. Menahane milata damre inashe. Bahade husa lake karba. Amar le-Dichtiv lama taribu elai kulechem peshatem bi neum Hashem. So Rava asked Rava bar Mari, what's the source of this folk saying that people say? So there's going to be a whole series of folk sayings, and we're going to try to derive the folk sayings from the Pisukim. Why are the rabbis doing that? It seems that they want to say all wisdom that you have in the world, you can derive from the Torah. If you look hard enough, you'll find a pasuk that already knows it. You think that you need wisdom from the folk sayings in the world, everything's hafoch ba, everything's there in the Torah. So the folk saying is that a cabbage is damaged with the thorn. If you have cabbages and thorns together and you go pluck out the thorns, it's likely that inadvertently you'll also end up plucking out or harming the cabbages while doing that. Where do we see a pasuk that teaches that? And the answer, the pasuk is from Yirmiyah, says, why are you arguing against me? All of you have sinned against me. And all of you, that means that Hashem is saying all of you, meaning the whole collective, everybody, even those who did not sin. The point here is that when there are some people of a community that sin and they deserve punishment, yet get punishment, in the end, their neighbors also are likely to suffer. That's just the way justice works. That the innocent sometimes can get swept up in the punishment of the wicked, and this is in fact one of the explanations of Sadiq Veda law, that once the destroyer is given permission to destroy, he does not distinguish, and yes, unfortunately, sometimes the bad decisions and deeds of wicked people can adversely affect the tzaddikim that are near them. Amar le at amat mehatam v'ana min mehacha ad ana me'antem lishmor misvotai v'torotai. And Rava said, you learned it from that pasuk? Nevi'im. Before also, first he brought pasuk from Yob. Says I'll learn it from pasuk in the Torah, which is a higher authority. And here it's after the people went and collected man on Shabbat. Hashem said, how long will you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? Me'antem in the plural, and that seems to include even Moshe. Now, obviously, Moshe didn't say, and he didn't go out and collect man, but nevertheless, once Hashem is angry at the evildoers who did collect man and went against them, Hashem says, all of you, you're all, how come you all go against my commandments? Now, same sages are asking each other, Ketib, man ninhu hamisha. The pasuk says that when then the children of Yaakov came down to Egypt, and Yosef revealed himself to them, and then Yosef introduces some of his brothers to Paro, and says 5 of his brothers he introduces to Paro. So which 5? The pasuk doesn't say, right, which 5, and why did he choose those 5? Amar le hachi amar Rabbi Yochanan otan shechpelu b'shemot. So Rabbi Yochanan explains, it's those who in the blessings in Vezota Beracha, their names are doubled. Like it says, Ul Asher Amar Baruch Mibanim Asher. So introduces Ul Asher Amar, Moshe said to Asher, and then it repeats his name within in the text of the blessing itself. So there's 5 tribes where their names are doubled. Why are their names doubled? The explanation is that these were weak, right? They were weak, and therefore, in the blessing, Moshe had to give them a double blessing, mention their name twice in order to give them strength. Yosef purposely chose the 5 weaker of the tribes, and notice, Dan, Zebulun, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, mostly the children of the Shefachot. So he presented them before Paro, so that Paro would not draft him to the army. If he presented Yehuda, right, not big and strong, you'd say, oh, look at this nice fellow here. Okay, you're going to be a general. So he gave him the weaklings. Paro would say, okay, you go and shepherd away out there in Goshen. I don't need you. Yehuda Namichpul Michpal. We ask about that. Wait, Yehuda's name is also repeated in his blessing. So why? But he was strong. His name had to be repeated for a different matter, a different derasha. So here, this is derasha Rabbi Shmuel ben Nachmani. How come the blessings for Reuben and Yehuda are linked together? Right. So for Reuben says, "Let Reuben live and not die," and his number should not be few. His number should be a number. It shouldn't be too little. It should increase. And then it says Vizot Yehuda. It doesn't say that for any of the other tribes, and also this, and this is for Yehuda. Why is there a close connection between Reuben and Yehuda? And the answer is, that the 40 years in the desert, we know that that Bnei Israel, Moshe, went and took Yosef's bones, says that explicitly, and carried them to Israel and buried them there. The Midrash adds that it's true for all of the Shevatim, all the sons of Yaakov, their bones were taken out of Egypt. Now those of Yehuda, the skeleton became undone, and the bones were all rolling around in the coffin as a punishment. A punishment for what? Another Gemara explains that Yehuda, he made a curse upon himself. He tells his father, if I don't bring Binyamin back, right, then I should be cursed. Now, even though he actually did bring Binyamin back, nevertheless, the curse was not fully annulled, and maybe it refers to the fact that Binyamin and all Bnei Israel are still in Egypt. They still haven't been able to come back, right, permanently. It's true, Binyamin came back, but then they all went down back to Egypt, and so because of that, so there's still a curse upon Yehuda, and so his bones are all rolling around, aren't together as a skeleton as they should be. And ad sheba Moshe ubikesh rachamim, amar lefanav ribono shel olam, mi garam l'Reuben sheyodeh Yehuda, until Moshe saw that his bones are rolling around, and he prayed to Hashem for Yehuda, and he said, Ribono shel olam, who caused Reuven to admit his sin? Reuven did something with the beds of his father, and Bilha, and because he, switched the beds as a euphemism, whatever he did there, so eventually he admitted. When did he admit? When he saw Yehuda admit in the Yehuda and Tamar affair, and Yehuda said, "You're right, I'm wrong." So Reuben said, "Oh, I see a model of teshuvah. If you do something wrong, you're supposed to admit what you did and make teshuvah. I'm also going to do so." So Yehuda was the one that inspired Reuben to make teshuvah. So miyad shama Adonai kol Yehuda. The idea here is that Yechid Reuben, right? Reuben should live and not die, meaning that he should not be punished and extinguished because of his sin, but rather he made teshuvah, v'zot Yehuda, and certainly Yehuda, who's the one who inspired Reuben to make teshuvah in the first place, certainly he should live and should be the curse that was upon him should be extinguished. And sure enough, right? Vezot Yehuda, right? Shema Adonai Kol Yehuda. Here's the second time it says in Yehuda's blessing, it says his name. So sure enough, when Moshe prayed, Hashem answered his prayers al ebre le shafa, and his bones entered the sockets, and the skeleton became whole again. So far, so good. However, but still, they didn't let Yehuda into the heavenly Bet HaMidrash. And so Moshe had to continue his prayer and say, Vel Amo tibienu, bring him to his people, let him enter the Bet Midrash. So fine, they did. But but still Yehuda was lost. He couldn't follow what the rabbis were saying. He was not able to give back and forth questions and answers together with the rabbis. He wasn't up to speed. Yadav Rav Lo. So Moshe had to continue praying and say, may his hands fight on his behalf. It's an amazing midrash, because in the Peshat it's talking about Yehuda being a warrior. He's going to go into Israel. He's going to be fighting on the front lines, and so all this is talking about his hand should be tough. But the midrash is allegorizing it too. Having courage and toughness in the fights of Torah, in argumentation of Torah. So after he got that knowledge, still he was not able to bring conclusions of the matters of discussion to figure out the final halacha, and Moshe finally had to pray and help him against his adversaries so he can win the arguments and figure out which one is the proper halacha, and Moshe prayed for that as well. Now we're going to have another long series of conversations and about aphorisms, common folk tales, and Abba here asks Rabba Bar Mari again, how do you know this folk tale that people say? What's the source of it? Batad aniya azla aniyuta. Poverty follows the poor. In other words, we would say today, the poor get poorer. Where do you see that? Amar le ditnan ashirim mebiim bikurim belatot shel zahav v'shel kesef v'aniyim b'salei nesarim shel adava kelufa hasalim v'bikurim notnim la kohanim. So we bring a source not from Pasuk, but rather from a Mishnah that's describing the way that they would bring Bikurim. The rich people would bring their Bikurim in baskets of gold and silver and present it to the Kohen, and then the Kohanim would take the fruits and return the gold and silver baskets to the owner, because the point of Bikurim is to donate the fruit, not to donate the baskets, so they take that back and use it again next year. But poor people, they would bring cheap baskets just made out of wicker, and they would give the baskets and the fruit and the fruit and the baskets to the Kohanim. And so you see that they lost out on their baskets. The rich get to keep their baskets. See, the rich get richer, but the poor, who for them bringing whatever little fruit that they have is already a big donation, they have to give up their baskets too. So you see, the poor get poorer. Rava said, oh, you brought a proof from there, from the Mishnah. I have a better proof. I have a proof from the Torah. Regarding a Mesorah, not only is he tameh, but he has to tear his clothes and go out out of the encampment, and everybody has to call him Tameh. He's Tameh. So not only does he have to suffer the effects of being Tameh, but also the public embarrassment of being called Tameh. Now, the analogy is to a poor person that is bad enough to be poor, that you can't afford the things that you want and the things that you need. Even worse is the embarrassment of being known and being seen and being called a poor person. So that's a source for the aphorism, the poor get poorer. Amar le Rava Rabba bar Mari, menaha miletad amur Rabbanan, hashkem ve'echol bakayitz mipnei hachama ubachor mipnei hasina. Where do we find a source for this aphorism that people say, wake up early and eat? You should have a good breakfast. In the summertime, because of the heat, you have to withstand the heat, and you need a good breakfast to have strength against it. And in the wintertime, because it's going to be cold, and you need a lot of strength in order to counter the cold. A good breakfast, and you're all set. Amri inashe shitin raho te rahut v'lamatu legabram de misafra kerach. And another aphorism that people say, that there are 60 runners. If you have 60 marathon runners, they will not be able to keep up with someone who eats a good breakfast in the morning. Right? Get your Wheaties in the morning, and then you're better than 60 marathon runners. What's the pasuk? Tichtiv lo yirabu v'lo yisma'u v'lo yakem sharab v'shamesh. That says they shall not hunger or thirst, meaning someone who is not hungry or thirsty because they eat a good breakfast, they will not feel the effects of the heat. It could be sunny and they're okay, and same thing with everybody else. They'll be in good health because they had a good breakfast. And Rava again says, oh, you brought a proof from there, from Yeshaya. I can bring a pasuk from the Torah, from Sefer Shemot. Va'abadetem et Hashem Elokechem, zo kiryat shema utfilah, uberachet lachmecha ve'et memecha, zo pat b'melach v'keton shel mayim, mikan ve'elach v'hasiroti machala mikirbecha. This pasuk gives you the proper order of the day. You wake up in the morning and you serve God. How do you do that? You say Kiryat Shema, you say Tefillah. And then God will bless your bread and your water. That's talking about breakfast. And you have, it doesn't have to be an elaborate breakfast, bread and salt and a pitcher of water. And after that, you will have no sickness in your midst. Right? You have no problem with any diseases because you follow this proper regimen. V'tanya mahala zo mara. When it says mahala, it's not just referring to any disease in general, but a specific disease of bile. So why is it called machala? Because the gematria machala is 83, and this sickness of bile that has 83 sicknesses connected to it. But all these 83 diseases that are caused by an imbalance of this bodily bile fluid, as long as you have some bread and salt and flask of water in the morning, you'll be protected from them. Amar le Rava Rabba bar Mari, menaha miletad Rabbanan, chabrach karyach hamara, uchva legabech mush. A folk saying says, if your friend calls you a donkey, don't protest and say, how dare you call me a donkey or whatever. Rather, accept it and prepare a saddle for your back. If he calls you a donkey, then say, okay, fine, I'm a donkey. Put a saddle on my back. In other words, if your friend has some words of rebuke for you, accept them, right? And maybe he's trying to help you. Hopefully he's trying to help you and put you on the right path, right? Don't shout back and get angry back. Accept it for what it's worth. Amar le dichtiv vayomar Hagar shifchat Sarai mize bat ve'ana telechi v'atomer mipnei Sarai gibrti anochi borachat. When the angel appears to Hagar, the angel says, Hagar, the servant of Sarai, where are you coming from and where are you going? So the angel called her a servant of Sarai, and she didn't say, she could have said, I ran away. Once she runs away, she's no longer a servant of Hagar. She could have said, no, I'm free, right? I'm a free person, a servant of Sarai. I'm a free person now. But she doesn't say that. She says, I'm running away from Sarai, my mistress, my owner. I am running from her. In other words, she accepted, oh, you say I'm still under Sarai's control? The angel says that? I accept. Yes, I'm still under Sarai's control. Amar le Rava le Rabba bar Mari, menahan mehane mileta ta'amri inashe. Milita gena'a di'it bech kadim amara amale dichti vayomad Eved Abraham anochi. Where do we know? What's the source for the folks saying that if there's a negative thing about you, you should say it first, right? If there's something negative, better that whoever you're talking to find it out from you than find it out from someone else, right? Be upfront about it. Says, listen, I have this problem, right? You get it out there. And before someone else says it. How do we know that? From Eved Abraham, when he meets the family of Rivka, immediately he says, "I am the servant of Abraham." Right? He puts it out there. I'm not an important person myself. I am a servant of Abraham. Amar le Rava Rabba bar Mari minaha hamilita damari inashe shafil baze bar avza ve'ane mitayefe. Where do we know? The folks saying that says a goose stoops his head as it goes, but its eyes are looking afar to find food. Now, even though its head is low and it looks like it's humble and it's only looking at the area right in front of it, but it's also keeping an eye far out to see if there's any food far away. So it's humble, both humble and looking far at the same time. And that's a proper thing to do. We learned it from what Abigail tells David. David asks Abigail's husband, Naval, to help him with food, and Naval says, "No, I'm not giving you food." And David says, "Okay, I'm going to kill you." And so David is out looking for Naval to kill him. Abigail, Naval's wife, comes and speaks to him and says, "Don't kill him. He's going to die soon anyway." And then Hashem will do good for you, and remember your maidservant. So this is a hint. Remember your maidservant is a hint to say, "Listen, when my husband, don't bother killing my husband. He's going to die soon anyway. And when he dies, remember me, and you can come in and marry me." Which is exactly what happens in the end. So you see that Abigail, she's coming and speaking with humility and requesting, begging David to spare her husband's life. And yet, like this goose that is humble, puts his head low, but also is looking far into the future to see, right, what benefit could come. She also is doing the same thing. And so that's how a person should act. Be humble, but also look to the future. Amar le Rava Rabba bar Mari, menahan mileta damere inashe. Shitin tichle matye lechacha dekal habre shema velo achal. The folks saying that people say, where does it come from? That 60 discomforts come to teeth of someone who hears the sound of someone else eating, but he doesn't eat. In other words, if you see someone eating or hear someone eating and then or in getting some enjoyment, you start salivating, and your teeth start hurting, your stomach starts grumbling, right? Just from experiencing someone else eating, you get hungry, and you get hunger pangs yourself. And this is referring not only to eating, but any kind of type of enjoyment or good thing. If someone else gets something good, then you automatically also are going to start thinking about how you want it, and it will bring pain to you if you don't have it. This is regarding Natan Hanavi said to David HaMelech, and he said that, listen, there's Adonijah is making a coronation banquet, and he invited all the important people, but he didn't invite me or Sadok HaKohen or Benayahu, right? Or your son Shlomo. In other words, beforehand, nobody was making any coronation banquets. No one was thinking about, who's going to be the next king. But now that Adonijah, he goes and makes a banquet, and he's declaring himself the next king. So now the other people that weren't there, that hear about it, their stomachs start grumbling. They start getting upset. So why is he becoming king? No, that's not right. Where's Shlomo supposed to be the next king? And so that prompts this grumbling and expressing to David that this should not be so. Rabbi here too says, you brought a pasuk from Navi, I'll bring a pasuk from the Torah. We see that Yitzchak marries Rivka, brings Rivka into the tent of his mother, Sarah, and he took her as a wife and loved her, and he was comforted from his mother. So in other words, Yitzchak married Rivka. And soon after, in the very next chapter, it says that Abraham went and took another wife, Keturah. What's the connection between the two? Abraham was okay. He was happy. But then when he saw Yitzchak took a wife, and look how he's so happy, so then his stomach started grumbling and saying, he gets to enjoy that. I want to experience that same joy. So he took a wife himself as well. What's the source of the folk saying that while wine belongs to the owner, everybody gives thanks to the one who pours it? You go to someone's house, and the owner, right, offers a nice, expensive bottle of wine, and he has a waiter there, and the waiter pours it. So who do you say thank you to? To the waiter. It doesn't belong to the waiter, right? The waiter decides if you want more or less, right? But immediate thanks go to the waiter, even though it's really the wine of the owner. What's the source for this? Amar ledichtiv, v'samachta et yadecha alav, leman yishmun v'yirun kol adat b'nei Yisrael, uchtiv, v'yoshua bin Nun malei ruach chochma, ki samach Moshe et yadav alav, v'shmu elav kol b'nei Yisrael. It's from these two Pesukim about Moshe transferring his authority to Yoshua. Hashem says, take Yoshua and put your hands upon him, and everybody, all B'nai Yisrael, will see that you are transferring the authority to Yoshua, and then they will listen to him. And then in Devarim it says, Yoshua was full of the spirit of wisdom. Why? Because Moshe laid his hands on him, and then all B'nai Yisrael listened to him. Now, what gives Yoshua the spirit of Hashem? Obviously, Hashem decides, okay, yes, I'm going to put my spirit in Yoshua and give him wisdom and give him proper leadership abilities. So Hashem is the owner of the wine. Moshe is just the conduit because he's there and wants to make a ceremony in front of the people so that the people can see that, yes, Hashem authorized this transfer of power from Moshe to Yoshua. But even though Moshe is like the waiter, nevertheless, even though Moshe is simply the waiter, all the Bnei Yisrael see that it's Moshe that gave over the power to Bnei Yisrael, and they gave the power over to Yoshua, and they listened to him. Even though Moshe was only the conduit, was only the waiter, he gets credit for giving that authority and the Ruach Hashem upon Yehoshua. Amar leRav Rabba bar Mari, menani milatad amrei nashe kalba bechafne gelale mibla. What's the source that people say a dog, when it's hungry, will eat even dung? In other words, we might say beggars can't be choosers, right? When when you have plenty, then you can choose to have good food. But when one is like hungry like a dog, then you'll even stoop down to eat something disgusting. Dichtiv nefesh re'eba tavush nofet v'nefesh re'eba kol malmatok. We have a pasuk from Mishleh, that someone who's full, his stomach is full, even honeycomb is delicious, right? So you say there's always room for dessert. Well, if you're really full, he doesn't even have room for dessert. No, I can't eat another bite. Nothing, not even honey. But someone who's very hungry, even something bitter is sweet, right? Take something bitter, it's delicious, because you're so hungry, you would eat anything. Amar leRav Rabba bar Mari, menahani milatad amrei nashe metayel ve'azel dikla bisha gabe kina desachre. What's the source of the folk saying that a bad palm tree strolls around among a grove of barren trees? In other words, like finds like, right? Misery loves company. Bad people find other bad people to hang out with. אמר לה, דבר זה כתוב בתורה, שנוי בנביאים, משולש בכתובים, מותנן במתניתין, ותננה בברייתא. And Rabba Mamari says, I have a lot of sources for that, right? It's in Torah, it's in Nevi'im, it's in Ketubim, it's in Mishnah, and it's also in a Baraita. Katub Torah, Dichtiv, Vayelech Esav El Yishmael. Torah says Esav went to Ishmael. Esav, low life, he goes, and who does he find to be his mentor? Yishmael, another low life. Shanu b'neviim tichtiv vayitlaketu el Yiftach anashim rekim vahiyu imo. Yiftach, who had problematic morals, who does he attract together to be with him? Other low-life people are his entourage. Mishulash beketum tichtiv kolof lemino yishkon ubnei adam la dome lo. Nevi'im, it says, all fowl live with his kind, and man also with those like him. In other words, every species finds itself, right? Birds, they go find other birds. And people find other people that are similar to themselves. This last one is actually a pasuk from Ben Sirah. Ben Sirah is not in Tanakh. It's not part of Ketuvim. It's actually one of the books of Apocrypha. That we found it was part of the Greek translation of the Bible, the Septuagint. It was included in there, and therefore you can find it in a Christian Bible because the Christian Bible took it from the Greek Bible. We had it only in Greek for a long time until in the Cairo Geniza we found an original Hebrew copy of at least part of the book of Ben Sirah. So the book of Ben Sirah actually is not in the Hebrew Bible. It's not part of Tanakh, but the sages that translated the Tanakh into Greek did include it. And here, the rabbis of the Talmud quote from the book of Ben Sirah and even call it from Ketuvim, Mishulash Ketuvim, and Ketuvim refers to book of Ben Sirah. So you see that the rabbis of the Talmud did consider this an authoritative work, which is really quite amazing. Okay, that's from the Ketuvim, and now from Mishnah, it says, Tana matitin kol mechubal latameh, tameh, kol mechubal latahor, tahor. Mishnah kelim, anything that's attached to something tameh will also be tameh. In other words, you have a vessel, and it becomes tameh, and it has some attachment to it, a hook or something, then that also will become tameh. And anything that's attached to a tahor vessel will itself also be tahor. This is also referring to the type of vessel, like a wooden plank doesn't become tameh, so also the attachments to that wooden plank cannot become tameh, and so on. So here it's not referring to people or moral goodness or bad or evil, but rather to vessels, but the same idea that like attracts like. And finally, v'tanena b'baraita, Rabbi Eliezer Omer, lo lechinam halach zarzir eser oreb, elam mipnei shehu mino. Rabbi Eliezer taught it's not for nothing that the starling bird goes to the raven, but rather because it's his kind. They're both non-kosher birds, and this is one way to identify a non-kosher bird: is if it hangs out with other non-kosher birds, then it also is not kosher. And so from here, that's where we learn this idea that a barren tree finds another barren tree, a rasha finds another rasha. Amar le Ravad Baba Mari menahani milita hamilita damri inashe karit habrach vela anach reme guda rabba shediba. Where is the origin of the folk saying that says, if you call to your friend, you call your friend for help, and he doesn't answer you, then you could stop the friendship, and you could put a large wall and put it in front of him, and don't attempt to help him anymore. Right? You ask for help, and he doesn't act as a friend. So then you put up a wall and you break off the friendship. Amale yan tihartich velo tahart metum'atech lo tithari od pasuk Yechezkel. Hashem is speaking and said, because I have given you tahara, I offered you friendship, but you did not accept it, and you did not cleanse yourself from your tum'ah. Therefore, no more. I'm not going to be your friend anymore. Hashem said, I offered you friendship, you rejected it. I'm not going to offer you again. Amale Rava l'Rabba bar Mari menahan hamil folk saying says, a well that you drank from, don't throw a stone into it. If you benefited from a well and you got some fresh, clean water from it, and now you're walking away and you're going somewhere else, don't throw a stone and ruin the well, right? The well did kindness to you, and so be kind to the well. We can learn this from the pasuk that says you should not hate an Edomi because he's your brother, and don't hate a Mitzri because you were strangers in your land. Now, you somehow some treatment of a stranger to enslave us. Nevertheless, we dwelt in their land. Right? We lived there, we ate and drank there, and therefore, even after we left, we should not throw a stone in it, but remember the good, even though there was also bad, that they enslaved us. But nevertheless, we should not hate the Egyptians. We ended up thriving in their land. The folk saying says, if you lift a load with me, I'll lift it. But if you don't come with me, I won't lift it. In other words, you're going to ask someone a favor, right? Can you help me with this? The helper shouldn't have to lift the whole thing himself, right? He says, can you help with me? And you come and say, fine, I will help you lift the other side. If you take one side, I'll help together with you, but I'm not going to take it all by myself. We learn this from Devorah, who was fighting against Sisera. And she said to Barak, I want you to be the general, and you lead the people in war. And Barak says, if you come with me, then I'll go, right? Join together with me, but I'm not going to do it alone. So we learn from here also that it's good, it's proper to help someone, but they should also help together with you. What's the source of the folk saying that says that when we were young, we were given high stature like men and given honor, but now that we're old, we're treated like children, right? Sometimes a younger person is given more honor, and then when they get old, then they're already not treated with such honor. They're treated like children. Amar le meikara ketib, va'Adonai holech lifnehem yomam ba'amud anan lanchotam haderech, ve'layla ba'amud esh la'ir lahem, ulbasof ketib, hahine anochi sholech malach lefanecha lishmorcha badarech. In the beginning of Bnei Yisrael's journey in the desert, it says Hashem walked before them in the daytime with a pillar of cloud, and at night with a pillar of fire to show them the way, to give them light. So Hashem himself accompanied Bnei Yisrael at the younger stage, no greater honor than that. But at the end, after some time passed, during the journey of in the desert, later on it says, Hashem says, I will send an angel before you to watch you on the way. Now, Hashem is not going to go himself, but he's going to send a messenger to protect them. So you see, in Bnei Yisrael's old age, later on, when you'd expect that actually their honor should increase, and that the opposite happens, that Hashem just sends a messenger, which is a lower level of honor. Amale Rabba Rabba Bar Mari Menahane Milata Damri Nashe Batar Mare Nichse Sibe Meshach Amale Dichti Vegam Lelot Haulechet Abraham Haya Son Ubakar Ve'ohalim. Finally, Rabba asked Rabba Bar Mari, where do we derive the folk saying that people say drag wood before a property owner? In other words, you should always be involved in the business matter with a rich person, even if you're not going to be a partner with the rich person, but you're just going to work as a laborer, dragging wood on behalf of the rich person. Still, it's good, because when you hang out with a wealthy person, then you'll do better also. There's more opportunities there financially to grow in that business, and you'll end up being good for yourself. There's more potential for growth. How do you know that? Because it says regarding Lot, that Lot, who went with Abraham, also got rich and got son bakar and tents, right? In other words, because he hung around with Abraham, so that was a good choice, right? And when Abraham was successful, also those people that worked lower down in this company, they also got benefits, and they also were successful. Baruch Adonai le'olam, amen ve'amen.